Welcome to the Wisdom Circle. To subscribe or follow us on your favorite podcast platforms, please visit us at www.thewisdomcircle.com.
So what I was curious of when you were talking, did Octagon buy MP Silva, or did you how did you end up at Octagon?
No. So unfortunately, MP and Silva had a traumatic end to it. They took advantage of this gold rush of Chinese public-private money into agency business and European football clubs. When private companies were being supported by the public government, and so my bosses at the time got a heck of a valuation, smartly exited, but within a year and a half they ran it into the ground, just as they've done. I mean, you've seen they bought Infront and Media Pro, and these companies have all had problems. All of the Inter Milan, AC Milan, anything that got bought up by China for all those middle of the country Premier League teams that were bought up with Chinese capital, they just didn't make it. And
it's interesting. You're sort of connecting the dot that Ray and I talked before you came on. Is money can do a lot of fun things, but it can't necessarily provide the talent to build and grow a company.
No, because it's people. It's people. Right. It's people and fans. It's the people that operate it, and you hope that the people that operate it understand the fans. And right. If you deliver, you deliver for the fans, then you'll continue to be in business.
Yep.
Yeah. And that. So sadly, no. Octagon. This was an old relationship. One of those things where you grab a dinner at Super Bowl and you spitball ideas at literally back of a napkin with the founder Phil DiPicciotto and at the time Chairman Rick Dudley, and they said, "Hey, we'd love to be in the media rights game. Octagon's got a killer talent business, and we're arguably the biggest on the brand marketing side, but we don't have that media rights offering that we can take to leagues, teams, athletes that now want to be in the original content business as it's lost in the last few years, private capital that needs diligence and work around whether or not to acquire or invest in things. And so would you want to come and be part of that group?" And I said, "No, I appreciate it. That is kind of you, Rick and Phil. I think the world of you too. I can learn a ton from you, but why am I going to go into a space where there's 50 other media consultants out there? And you've got other big agencies that have been in this space for 20 plus years. How are we ever going to catch up? How are we going to pass them?" And Rick said, "Give me a few weeks. Let me introduce you to IPG, our parent company, where I think you're going to have a unique advantage over all competition out there. If you put Octagon and our history, our relationships together with the data that you can get from a company that buys $43 billion worth of advertising over 200 markets all over the world, and you take your relationships, put those three together, and you can go do the Thai Football Federation's media rights deal, because we've got 175 people that are buying sports television broadcasting advertising in Thailand. So you've got your viewership analysis, you've got your CPMs, you've got proprietary consumer reports and surveys and first-party data that no one else can really have. And that helps you build the modeling, the analytics behind the negotiation. And you know the folks that run the 3-4 major networks there, boom. And sure enough, they were right. We're 8 years into the business now. 55% of our business is U.S., 45% is outside the U.S. And, just in the past year, we were in India, Switzerland, the UK, France, Mexico, Brazil, Canada, doing deals. All thanks to IPG going in and having an office with people and data.
So you had your own wisdom circle, basically.
Yes.
You had
very much so. Very much so. Yeah.
Wow. I have a question, Tony. I didn't want to end.
No, go ahead.
Yours. Yeah. So what do you think about, and to the extent that you can, would love to get your take on the private equity, and their that I don't know what to call it. I guess maybe you'll tell me what you call it, but obviously it's new and it's embraced now by the NFL. It's not new, but it's embraced by the NFL, which is probably like what everybody's like, okay, if we could just get to that. What do you think about how that all goes?
Well, there's two trains of thought for me, right? One is my bottom line, which it's been great for.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much longer it'll be great for because they're hiring really smart people that have done 40 years of work in this space.
Right.
You know, Sixth Street just goes out and gets Russell Wolf from ESPN. I mean, they're getting smarter internally around the core revenue driver of whatever their investment's going to be, media rights. But for now, we've seen our business 10x in terms of clients that are calling us for retainer-based advisory work on should we buy the WWE last year? Should we buy 10% of this European football league?
Right.
So from that perspective, it's been great. But from a more holistic perspective, I think the jury's still out with whether or not this is a good thing for sport, whether it's a good thing for fans.
Right.
You know, private equity is not in the business of being a charity. Private equity is not in the business of taking losses. And I have started to hear, I won't name names because we work with a bunch of them, but started to hear a little bit of change of approach and strategy from some of the funds that are in the news every day. You know, we're not in the 5 to 7 year hold anymore. We're long-term investors. We can be in this for 20 years, different exit strategies. That gives me some confidence that sport can benefit from these investors.
Do you think? Because, I mean, I guess it goes back to Wall Street, 1985. Michael Douglas is out in the Hamptons at the Australian guy who's buying Blue Star Airlines. He's like, you don't get it, mate. I'm in this one. I'm going to turn it around. And I just sat there 40 years ago and said, bullshit. You are not in this to turn Blue Star Airlines around. One of the great scenes where he shows him the Luger. I mean, that's just one of the all-time classic movies to me. That and Glengarry Glen Ross, which was my favorite. But do you think that's actually so? Like, is somebody really going to be in it for, like, we're in it for the long haul? I find it hard to believe, but I'm outside looking in. You're inside, and you have to have a radar for like.
Yeah, no, very, very much. Because it's so new, we don't know the answer, right? CVC's only been investing in rugby and in the French league and in La Liga for a year or two. The NFL hasn't taken on private equity ownership yet, even though we think in the next 6 weeks or so the first one will get announced. So we just don't know yet.
Yeah, it's true.
But history says that that they're not in it to be long-term investors and take losses along the way and fuel growth. They're in it. They are there to fuel growth, but they're in it to exit.
Right.
So what happens? Are we going to see, typical private equity come in and cut a bunch of jobs, automate a lot? I think AI plays a big role and I don't think a lot of people are making that connection right now.
I'm sure.
The trades where private equity is, how can I come in and cut the 15 people that work in the social media department of this team or league because I'm going to hire an AI company that's going to auto-generate and auto-clip everything and send it out on social channels. Production, right? Something that Ray, you know very well, living in a truck for so many years. We've moved to Remy's a lot.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
And so how can we bring down, they're going to focus on bringing down cost, bringing up margins.
Right.
And I think AI will play a big role in that. Now, is that
really interesting?
How does that benefit the fan? I don't know. I'll tell you, fragmentation of media rights has not benefited the fan.
No.
That's why we're seeing a rebundling, and we're going to see more rebundling. There was
a tweet about a year ago now about with all the streaming and everything we have, why can't we just have one central source to tell us, what's on? And the tweet back was, you mean like cable?
Yeah.
Tony, what do you want to take up on that?
It'll be interesting to see, these team owners, it's like a very private club, 32 owners. And now you're going to have some private equity folks with enough percentage to have a seat at the table with a whole probably different perspective as some of these particularly some of the original owners, or not literally the original owners, but some of these teams that go back with long history. So it'll be interesting to see the dynamic and the push and pull. These things, I can remember when Sterling had the issue with the Clippers, right, and was basically banned from the NBA, and he had to sell the Clippers. And I don't think I'm telling anything out of school. And then Ballmer came in and paid $1 billion, which was like unheard of in those days. Adam Silver said to me, who was the commissioner, he said, 6 months ago, we couldn't sell an NBA team for a couple $100 million. It was so deflated. And a lot of the owners had borrowed against their team after the '08 crash, right? And so they were distressed. No one wanted to buy them. And all of a sudden, Ballmer comes in for $1 billion, and all of a sudden changed the whole landscape of the value of an NBA team.
I learned to never correct Tony because I'm going to get slapped later, but I think it was $2.5 billion.
Well, yeah, it was a big.
I'll never forget it because it was like, what just happened? Because it was that, and I won't ever call Steve Ballmer or anybody who spends that kind of money stupid, but it was stupid money. It was like, this does not change my life. In fact, whatever. But Daniel, you have something to say, go.
I would say, though, given my experience of working for a couple of ownership groups and helping to facilitate transactions and how that valuation financial analysis gets done, I think valuations are absurd right now. I don't see where the ROI is.
Right.
I know we've always talked about a lot of these teams are toys for some of the owners, and they've got primary businesses that they rely on. And that's not always the case, but in many cases it is. But the valuations that we're seeing some private equity companies come to us and ask us to gut check are illogical. And I do think that one of the reasons why we're seeing leagues loosen up their restrictions around institutional capital is because they need a solution for these very high valuations. It's not that they're addressing the valuations, they're fueling higher valuations. And you're going to reach a point where, a lot of people talked about this with Tepper buying the Panthers and then Harris buying the Commanders. There's only so many individuals that can write a check that size. And so what's the next stop? Is it let's retool, or is it let's open up the floodgates to the next capital pool of institutional wealth? And then it becomes, look at the Premier League, sovereign wealth funds.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you've got Man City winning year after year after year after year after year, and you lose a lot of that parity and you lose a lot of fan interest. So that's where my concern goes is, does this fuel a greater separation of the have and have-nots to the point where, gosh, look at the first couple of weeks of the NFL right now. Every game is coming down to the last play, the last drive, and it's fantastic. And from an average duration, an average viewership, total viewer hours, up 8% in the first week, right? So that's just on average audience. But what happens when the same teams just keep winning because they've got more cash? So I think if I'm sitting at Major League Baseball, the NBA, PGA Tour, whatever, where the NFL, I'm thinking about how do I balance influx of capital with continued parity?
Oh, that's really interesting dynamic.
Yeah, no, it's so Daniel, what do you? You're sort of saying it in a way, but I'll be more specific with the question as we sort of get close to wrapping up here. What's the thing you're most encouraged about relative to the world you're in right now, the media rights, and then what's the thing that you may give pause to and makes you a little concerning?
Well, there's a lot on the concern side. I'll start with the positive because there's a lot of positives. I tease. I love sports is it. If you're a brand, if you're a broadcaster, you need sports. Nothing can aggregate the audience like sports. And that's why you continue to see Ray, Tony, you've been in the business longer than I. You've heard the shouts from Wall Street and other places. The media rights bubble's going to burst. The media rights bubble's going to burst. It's never burst. It's changed. Who gets more has changed.
Yep.
The distribution platforms have changed. The players in the broadcast space have changed. But the value, the underlying intrinsic value to live sports, specifically the tier one, will always drive audience, drive revenue, and drive fandom, and amass the largest amount of people globally that you can. And that gives me job security.
Yeah.
And that also gives me a lot of optimism and hope that I'm not at a niche cable network trying to survive right now. I'm in the middle of the vertical of entertainment that is number one, and that's sports. So that part's the most hopeful, optimistic. On the challenging side, I mean, the obvious is our ecosystem is crumbling, and paid television and cord cutting has had a material and will continue to have a material negative impact on sports leagues, teams, and federations all over the world. And we're seeing a growing separation of the haves and the have-nots. If you're a mid or lower tier startup, nascent growth league, whatever you want to call it, it's a real challenge right now to find those free-to-air windows, to get license fee checks. And if you're a tier one, if you're the NFL, if you're the NBA, how are you going to stay in that position? And how are you going to continue to grow when you are so grossly paid above and beyond your next level peer set property? And so that the cord cutting, cord erosion part concerns me. The RSN space concerns me greatly. We have a lot of clients that are NHL, NBA, and MLB teams, and we just don't know. There's so much uncertainty there. On the pay TV side, the really smart folks on my team can analyze all day, and we have a good sense of, we're at 67 million homes for ESPN now. We're at about a 7.5% clip of erosion per quarter, where we're going to be in a few years, and we can help our clients juggle their decision-making based off some strong underlying analysis. RSN business, there's no analysis. Right. Diamond Sports Group is living to fight another year. We're going back to the 90s, the days of WPIX and the Yankees, right?
Yeah.
Going back to over the air, right? So we've got Tegna and Nexstar and Scripps and Gray all back in the mix. But the beam and stream philosophy that the Jazz and others have taken on, Utah Jazz, comes with it some immediate short to midterm significant revenue hits. You might 10x your reach, but you're going to lose 40 to 60% of your revenue from that regional sports network check. Then something I don't think we're reading a lot about in the trades is, how does that then have a ripple down effect on player salaries that have ballooned?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And ticket pricing.
Right? And so collective bargaining agreements come up.
The hot dogs you ate are going to be $30 a piece.
And so, Ray, you just nailed it. The consumer is going to bear and has borne a lot of this. The average U.S. household has had 5.5 in 2021, had 5.5 subscription video on demand products. We're now down to 4.5. So you're starting to see wallets get tighter. You can only how many Paramount Pluses, Peacocks, and Maxes can a household and Amazons can a household afford? Yeah. And so so those are some of the challenges that keep me up at night.
Yeah.
And then we do a lot of work. We represent 7 conferences, college conferences, and that moving realignment chessboard.
It's not helping the fans. It's not turning on.
Well, so in some ways it could help a fan.
Others. Yeah.
There's certain instances where I think it does help the fan. In certain instances, I think you're right, it doesn't. But the politics of it all, the NIL, the transfer portal, realignment, conference composition, as a media rights consultant, it's a hot potato game right now, right? We're helping a conference that's in the middle of it right now this week sort out what does their next media rights deal look like when they don't know what their composition looks like. And the two are intrinsically intertwined. And so it's a fun time because it makes us stretch and makes us be creative with solutions and moving football games to the middle of the week, perhaps, like we've done with Conference USA, which has returned a 4x increase in their viewership. But it's also, you can only do so much wiggle room within the framework of an ever-shifting landscape of, as I mentioned, Congress being involved and states being involved, public schools versus private schools, and ability to do things. And so, pay TV, college landscape, RSNs, keep me up at night.
Yeah, I get it. It's fascinating. I'd love to have you back. Before we go, and I don't want to not give Tony the last question, but I have one, and we've done a master class here, so I want to, I mean, seriously, this is like, what was I bad at? I was bad at everything, but it was like calculus for me. Like, geez, but it was fun, and you were great. When you were 12 years old, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, man. I wanted to be the GM of the New York Yankees. I played Stratomatic baseball with
Me too.
Love it.
Yep.
I said to my wife the other day, our 5-week-old, I said, "Do you think there's a chance that he or our 2-year-old will ever play Strat with me?" And she was like,
"I'll play with you.
If you put it on a phone, maybe. Put it on an iPad." All right,
Yeah.
Ray, you'll play with me. Good.
I've got a box right here in my dresser in this room. But sorry.
So
I hope they
just
will.
growing up playing Strat.
Yeah.
Always put it in me that I wanted to be a GM, and that's what I thought working, going to work for free for a baseball team would lead me in that direction, and
Very cool.
And it didn't.
So, but you had the scope right, sports and growth. Tony, I'm not gonna.
No, I think we've covered it. No, it's just reminding me, just as a close, how simple 40 years ago the business was. In a way, Ray and I had it pretty easy. And the sophistication, which may be the misused word, of how the intelligence of the business and the qualification of people in the business is so much different than it was when we first started. And it's going to continue to grow. And so for young people who are listening, it's like absorb, and observe,
and don't be afraid. Take risks.
Yeah.
Make relationships
but it's
lucky.
Also, again, you underline this, it's about the people. As sophisticated it's going to get, whether it's AI or people highly degreed or, intelligent and everything else. At the end of the day, people want to work with people they want to hang out with, and trust.
Yeah.
And that's not going to go away, because at the end of the day, we are human beings until we start reporting to robots. But I can't thank you enough from my standpoint. I'll let Ray wrap us up. But I think this is going to be great for our listeners, and really appreciate your time. I know you've got, Ray and I are working our podcast in between golf rounds, and you've got real work to do.
Well, the two of you are friends, mentors. You are pillars of our industry. So what you're doing with this podcast and affording younger students and business folk to learn about what we do, I'm honored to be on it. I appreciate the time, guys.
Great. Thank you. And feel better and enjoy the kids. They grow up fast.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.